And welcome to your Political Pulse. We are joining Governor Larry Rhoden right from his office here at the South Dakota Capitol. And Governor, the legislature is well underway. What kind of vibe are you picking up off this session?
Well, so far so good. You know, there were a couple minor dust-ups in the Senate and some procedural stuff. But all in all, you know, we always expect you get late in the session and tempers get a little short and people are a little more on edge. But all in all, they're in very good shape to get a balanced budget done and on my desk in relatively good shape. You know, you always wonder if when the wheels might fall off things, but so far so good.
You've seen so many of these. I would imagine it almost works like clockwork when you see the way people get along in the beginning of session versus when you're kind of underway and those disagreements start really playing out.
Yeah, and it's you know, you always look at the old days like, you know, that was the gold standard, but you know, the last couple years they have gotten the budget on through the process in better shape than they had for years before that. And I remember in the old days, a lot of times they suspended the rules on crossover day because they couldn't get all the bills done, and of course they'd cover the clock and all that. They haven't had the need to do that. And even this year on crossover day with the incidents that occurred, they still both chambers were done in very good shape.
Going into that budget, I know you pointed recently to some stronger numbers than were initially projected. And now you're pushing for an increase, 1% increase to education, to healthcare, to state employees, the big three, as they're called here in South Dakota. How welcome of news was that for you as the executive of the state to realize there might be a little bit more money to work with?
Well, it was great news. You know, that was probably the biggest disappointment that I saw with the numbers coming into session, and so when I did my budget address to have to take that kind of a you know, an approach of no increase for the big three. You know, it was a responsible thing to do and the right thing to do, and also understanding that if you look back for the previous 6 years, if you total all the increases, we were still ahead of the game. But it still seems it's a letdown to not be able to provide some kind of inflationary increase in those areas. And so, yeah, I was tickled to be able to promote a 1% increase.
Yeah, it seemed like at the start there you were kind of stuck in a tough position. You had some people who wanted you to actually cut government spending. You had others who were upset you weren't putting more into the big three. That must have been a challenge, I would imagine, to wager.
Yeah, well, you kind of rise above that. We have some very talented people on our team. We have a pretty clear indication where we're at, so we just stay true to our values of we don't spend more than we have to spend.
Okay, I want to go into your trip to Washington, D.C. We recently saw photos of you and your old predecessor, Secretary Kristi Noem. We also saw a photo with you and the President. Yeah. You and the First Lady of South Dakota and the President. Share with us, what were your key takeaways from that trip in D.C.?
Well, it's always great, you know, to meet with other governors and get perspective. We had a number of meetings with them. Went to the White House and got a briefing from the governor, or from the President. And we had a Q&A. It was kind of interesting because he kind of talked to us for a considerable amount of time, and then when we started the Q&A, an aide came in and gave him a slip of paper, and it was when he found out the 6-3 Supreme Court decision on tariffs. So that kind of threw him off his game a little bit, and kind of led to an abrupt ending of that meeting. But I had a little bit of time with him the next night, on Saturday night, when they had the ball at the White House, and re-upped my invite to him to the 250th celebration at Mount Rushmore, and we chatted a little bit about that. So it's good. Always good to touch base with him.
When you gauged his interest level on coming out here to Rushmore, how likely do you think it is we might see the President?
You know, I absolutely know that he would love to do that, but I also know that he's, you know, it's the 250th year celebration. I know he's got, you know, thousands of opportunities to be anyplace else. But I know in his heart of hearts that he'd very much like to be there with us.
What do you think were the most key discussions between governors and the President? They had this opportunity to sit in front of him and really have that state-federal conversation.
Well, you know, there are a lot of conversations about, and especially through the NGA, the national governors, there's areas we can agree on, and we've talked about, my predecessor used to say that, and I agree wholeheartedly, that what's wrong with America will not be fixed in Washington, D.C. It'll come from the governors and the states. And I believe that's absolutely true. And to hear conversation from a collective of very sound-minded governors, even on the other side of the aisle, that have ideas and concepts of how we can get past some of the key issues that plague us, and that solution coming from the states, I think that's very encouraging. I think that's an area where it benefits the entire nation. If we can work as governors with the president to come up with a strategy that benefits our nation, we can solve a lot of issues.
It's such a fascinating meeting. I mean, you have governors from across the country embarked on Washington, D.C. They're all in the same room. What were those conversations like, just conversations among governors?
Well, again, very impressed with just that, finding that common ground. Obviously, there are issues that separate us, but there are other areas that we can work together on. And it's a little different than you might think, because some of the outliers, I won't name any governors, but certain ones that are kind of lightning rods that aren't present. So it helps us have more meaningful, productive conversations, I think. Keeping some of those big personalities out of the room? Yeah, big personalities that really like to accentuate the extreme left, or maybe even the extreme right, I don't know. Okay, State of the Union. The governor, or the president, covered a lot of ground that night. It was almost a 2-hour State of the Union address. What were your big takeaways from that? Well, yeah, I missed the first part of it. I didn't get back to the house, but I caught the last. You caught the back 3 hours. I still got plenty of State of the State. Well, I'll tell you, my biggest takeaway that just made me proud of our state was the Congressional Medal of Honor that was awarded to Royce Williams. Just to hear that story, I think it was a key component in the whole State of the State address, and then to have him from South Dakota, I think he did our state and our nation proud. Yeah, he was in the Korean War. He takes on several Soviet aircraft alone. I'm sure you know his plane was severely damaged by the time he landed it. I was doing a lot of research on this yesterday. I think one of the challenges was he had to stay quiet for 50 years. Yeah. So it's quite a story to be such a war hero and really not be able to talk about it in any capacity. I'm sure that had to have weighed on him. Yeah, I thought that was probably one of the most significant parts of the story, is how long that remained classified, and his heroism went unpublished. But I think about that, and I remember Governor Rounds coming out to Sturgis, South Dakota, at one point, and he gave a medal to a neighbor of ours out there. Now I've lost his name, but he was flying a bomber and was shot down. He did an ocean landing and saved most of his team, but that story went untold. I'd been neighbors with him my entire life, and it wasn't until I was 50 years old that story came out. Yeah, I could only imagine. I do want to talk about the southern border. There's really a South Dakota connection there. One, with the fact that Secretary Noem was once the governor here of South Dakota. And two, just the fact that I believe some of the results that are playing out on the border that the president touched on also just were brought up in a recent crime report here in South Dakota. The president saying fentanyl's down more than 50% coming across that southern border. I'm sure you saw the crime report out of South Dakota showing that fentanyl was down, as were other drugs. Yeah, that very interesting numbers, and I think we had a double benefit in South Dakota. First, our Operation Prairie Thunder. You look at the drug arrests that we made through Operation Prairie Thunder. That combined with closing the border and stopping a lot of the fentanyl from coming across the border, I think the two of them worked together to present double-digit decreases in crime rates in South Dakota. So I was pretty tickled to see those numbers and those kind of results. Now, forgive me for asking, Operation Prairie Thunder, is that continuing? It is. It is.
And what are your goals with it for 2026? We got a lot of year ahead of us.
Well, it's a good question. You know, we've taken it statewide, and they've got more missions scheduled, and of course we don't announce them in advance for obvious reasons, but we just take it one step at a time, and I allow them a lot of latitude to make the arrangements on their own, and the time and place, and I get briefed on them, and so far we've been seeing great success.
When you say success, part of that really is catching the bad guys. Are you surprised at all what you see when you see these reports come back from these missions?
Well, yeah, when you look at the cumulative totals, the results are pretty amazing and significant statewide. And I think it's just, it just is a great message from South Dakota that we don't tolerate that in South Dakota, and we respect law enforcement, and we respect the rule of law.
So your property tax plan, we're going to go far from crime to property taxes. Your property tax plan made it through the Senate, so now it's in the House of Representatives. This, of course, would allow counties to enact up to a half-a-cent sales tax to offset property taxes for the people who live in that county. And as you pointed out, that money would stay locally. It would actually stay within the county. It doesn't go to the state, then head back. What is your message right now to the House of Representatives as they consider that bill?
Well, I think it's become more and more clear that it's the right plan. You know, it's not a mandate. It's an option, and it's an option that will appeal to the areas that were the hardest hit and do the most benefit to the counties that were the hardest hit by very dramatic increases in owner-occupied home values. So I'm looking forward to hearing the debates and moving it forward, but I think we're pretty much on track.
You put out a map today showing how much people would save should this plan pass. Pennington County, $886, that's nearly $900 on a $325,000 home. So you can only do the math there. Yep. If your home's worth more than $325,000.
Yeah, whatever percentage of that. If your house worth half that, it would be half that amount in state. Yeah,
Meade County showing $530, Lawrence County $732, and Fall River County $649. So these are pretty significant savings. If that's a $325,000 home, as you know, you get into some of these properties in the hills, you're multiplying $325,000 by quite a few.
Yeah, for sure. And again, just the fact that it doesn't matter what those numbers say. It matters how that impacts your county, and if that's a good fit for you. And the counties, again, if you look at those maps, Minnehaha, Lincoln, Pennington County, far and away the three counties that were the hardest hit by increases, the percentage increase in their owner-occupied. They are the three of the counties that benefit the most from a proposal like this.
So would you down the road consider allowing that half cent to go up? And I guess I would also ask, why the half cent? What led you to that number?
So it was kind of the sweet spot, because we had a lot of conversation of going above that amount or less than that amount. But at a half cent, and you can look at that active map like of Lincoln County or Pennington County, Minnehaha County, and a half cent in all three of those counties was right at 90%, 87 to 95%, I believe, of the of the county portion of the property tax in those three counties. It reduced it by 90-some%. So it was kind of a sweet spot. There are some counties where it goes well above that, at like 200% of the county portion, in which case the remaining dollars reduce the other two classes of property. So it was a number that was substantial, and yet it was, the reason I didn't go higher than that is, I've said it many times that, the property tax as a whole is the primary funding source for state government. And so we should be very careful about using it for other areas, in this case, property taxes. But I think it's justifiable, and so we kept it to a number that was significant and delivered real dramatic results, and yet did not subvert the system, if you will.
Yeah, one of the things I know lawmakers have expressed support on with this is the fact that counties can decide for themselves whether or not it makes sense for them.
Right. Yep. Local option. It's all up to the counties, and we made it as flexible as we could. I mean, if the county commission can initiate it, if the people don't like it, they can refer it to a vote. On the other side of that, if the county commission doesn't implement it, it can be initiated by a vote of the people. So all kinds of options.
You recently made a veto that I think would surprise some people just given your ranching background, and this was the all-out ban on lab-grown meat. You are instead, I know, pushing for a 5-year moratorium on the sale of that product, lab-grown, cell-cultured, what have you. Why did you feel banning it all out was not the right move for South Dakota?
Well, several reasons. But I mean, if you think of it from just the principle of the thing, it's being litigated in other states, and so one of the reasons for vetoing, not the primary reason, is there are already lawsuits in other states. Let's give us enough time for them to play out. But more importantly, it's the precedency is set. What I told producers, and obviously I'm never going to touch it. I call it cell cultured protein, because it's not meat in my view. And in fact, on that point, last year, and I think I bring this up because there's a lot of misunderstanding about it. Last year, I signed a bill to require labeling that would prohibit them from calling it meat, because it's not.
Yeah, the proper labeling. And I know the producers were really backing that because I think a lot of them believe that should consumers know exactly what they're buying, they would choose regular grown.
That's right. The biggest problem it was the principle of if a state can ban a product, whatever it is, just because they don't like it, they can just outlaw it. What happens next week when California decides they don't want beef or GMO products or whatever in their state?
My entire family would move out of the state, for the record. They're steak eaters.
Well, that's true, but the reality is the California's economy is so great that would have huge detrimental effect on the entire United States, and especially cattle producers in South Dakota. So, you know, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Do you believe in the principles of limited government and the rule of law, or don't you? And
I'm sure you remember a few years ago, I would imagine pork producers were on this, and I can't remember the exact, but California was starting to roll back the pork that they were purchasing based on the raising standards, and I know a lot of producers felt like those limitations were just too tight on their operations.
That's right, and it caused a ripple effect dramatic across the nation.
Okay, so I do want to end here. When you look at all the bills that you did sign into law this year, which bills are you most proud of?
Well, a couple come to mind. I mean, the first bill I signed into law made the challenge at the State of the State address that I'd like to see the Rural Health Care Initiative be the first bill to reach my desk. And the legislature, they came through and landed out on my desk, and that was the first bill we signed. And because there's a tremendous amount of impact from that kind of dollars, and the flexibility the federal government has given us to take advantage of that. And so that was a big deal. The other one I thought was very satisfying was on the suppressors, to get them declassified in state law. I think that was significant in that we're leading the nation in protecting our Second Amendment rights.
Trying to send the message to Washington, D.C., right, to get those off of that controlled weapons list.
Exactly right.
So back to healthcare, did you listen to the president's remarks the other night? I mean, one of the things he talked about in the State of the Union was the cost of healthcare, and he shared some of his own plan to try to offset healthcare costs. When we talk about the state budget, I know this is always woven into those conversations, the cost of healthcare on the state. I mean, is there anything that you hear in his plan that might lessen, maybe not even just the burden for people purchasing healthcare, but also for states?
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't hear that part of his State of the State, so I really don't know what to tell you on that.
Okay, well, we'll go back to the rest of session here, what are your goals to finish out this session?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And sometimes we get so caught up in the minutia, we kind of lose track of the big picture. And the big picture is we're going to present a balanced budget for our state. We don't spend more than we have. What we do have, we spend wisely. And so a balanced budget is the ultimate priority in legislature. There'll be winners and losers on some of these individual bills, but all in all, we will finish with a balanced budget, and will remain the second lowest tax state in the nation. And so I say that with a great deal of pride, because I think it's pretty significant, the services that we provide for our state, the fact that we have the second fastest growing economy in the nation, second best GDP in the nation. Well, that's one and the same, but I think we're second highest in growing incomes. And to do that from a state that's taking the least amount of money from its taxpayers is something we should be proud of in South Dakota.
All right, well, Governor Larry Rhoden, we appreciate you for inviting us into your office again for another special Political Pulse.
Thank you, Blake.
All right, and that will do it for your Political Pulse.